Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next edition of Ami Sites. I'm Ami Kassar, your host, along with my guest today, Amy Holtz, EOS Queen. We are missing today my co-host, Lynn Ozer, SBA Queen. I was kind of looking forward to having the SBA Queen and the EOS Queen on the same show, but we're going to make the best out of it. Amy, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's good to get promoted to Queen.
Let's backtrack a little bit, Amy, because your background is fascinating to me. So why don't you talk about it?
Okay, my professional background, I assume you want.
Whatever you want.
I'll stick with professional. So I was a banker, lawyer, hated both of those things. Joined a family business. When I joined, we were a chain of 8 independent party stores doing about $8 million in revenue. When we sold 15 years later, we had become Party City's largest franchise, 900 employees, 25 stores, over $75 million in revenue. After that, I joined a nonprofit media company. And when I joined, there was no money in the bank and no distribution. But other than that, it was a great company. When I left 7 years later, we were distributing films on PBS, Netflix in 26 countries, had 1,000 organizational partners. And what I'm most proud of is I left them with a lot of cash in the bank because I know you love cash. In those jobs, I discovered a couple of things. Number one is running a business is a lot of fun until it's not. And then very often your business starts to run you instead of you running your business. The other thing that happened is I sat in many seats. I was CEO, general counsel, head buyer, head merchant. One day I was unloading a truck and one of the kids working for me said, "Amy, you would be a great stock guy." And I realized then that I thought that was a big compliment. Today I know it's a mistake. You can't be the chief cook and bottle wash and get as far as you want. So I was blessed with a lot of success, but I also made a lot of mistakes. Then I founded an organization and I ran it on EOS. And it was a game changer. It was the first time I ran my business. My business wasn't running me. And what I had specialized in was a lot of explosive growth, but with that, I often created chaos. When I ran that business on EOS, it was organized. And when I left, I turned over a turnkey organization. So I couldn't believe that was possible. I became an EOS implementer almost 6 years ago because I want to help other people avoid all the mistakes I made.
What's it like on the other side?
It's nice. It's really nice. It's so interesting to be able to see people because very often you can't see yourself. So I sit with leadership teams and I really get to see how different things play out. And when you don't have the courage to make the tough decisions, even though you need to make them, I see leaders who don't let their people grow. It's really interesting to see all of it.
Okay, so let's get into some questions.
Yeah.
Ready?
I don't know.
Come on.
What?
Does your EOS implementer have to be local or can they be anywhere?
They could be anywhere. During COVID, I did most of my sessions virtually, and people do travel. I believe it's much better doing them live than doing it virtually because a lot of it is about building team health, and there's something powerful that happens when you're in person. So you could get an EOS implementer from anywhere, but I highly recommend if you have the option to bring everybody in and do it live.
Okay, so that's the first question. Can you do it? Is it better virtually or in person? What you're saying is you can do it virtually, but your preference is in person. Is that correct?
My preference for the team is in person. A lot of what we do is about building team health. And there's something powerful that happens when people are in person that you do not get as much virtually. It's also very hard to pay attention. When you're in person, it's much easier to pay attention. So I think it's 1,000 times better in person. I do both.
Or if you have ADHD, like most entrepreneurs, you can't pay attention wherever you are.
That's true. I have a lot of ADHD in my sessions. It's typical visionary.
So, Amy, my next question is what company size do you have to be for it to start to make sense?
So we say the best companies are the target market's 10 to 250 employees. The truth is, I have some startups. It's a real luxury for startups because most people, you create very good habits by starting with EOS. So I've done it with just one visionary before he's gotten started. I have several startups. However, it's a luxury, and it's more important that you have product market fit before you start EOS. EOS won't solve a product market fit problem. But basically 10 to 250 employees, some are smaller, some are bigger. The key to success is the attitude of the team. You need to be willing to be open, honest, and vulnerable. If you're not, it doesn't work.
Okay. So let me ask you a couple of questions because I get asked, I meet a lot of times entrepreneurs who I think could deal with some form of coaching. And the question I always have is who to send them to and why, who to refer them to and why.
Well,
And naturally, every coach says, send them all to me. But how do you help an entrepreneur figure out what they need when and what their level of priorities is?
so there's the person that you're hiring, and then there's what they need. I believe I become so involved in my clients' businesses that I almost think I'm a business shrink. And just like when you're hiring a therapist, if you've ever hired anyone, you have chemistry with some people and you don't with other people. So I think you're picking the person. It has to be somebody you connect with. So I am the type who's open and honest. I'll tell it to you like it is. I once told a CEO he was not the right guy for the job. I am not for everybody. If you want somebody who is, who's a little softer in how they deliver messages, that's not me. So I think you have to have a chemistry with the person that you're working with. Then the question you've asked, which you've asked me before, is how do I know? Am I sending them to a sales coach? Am I sending them to an EOS implementer? Am I sending them to a fractional CFO? It depends on what their main problem is. I was speaking to somebody yesterday. They called me for EOS, but really what I realized quickly is this guy needs a sales coach. He doesn't need an EOS implementer. He probably needs both. But I was able to diagnose that he needed a sales coach. And, after he solved, that's his biggest problem right now.
And I think that's my point, Amy, because I see so many people. I think it's so easy to get misguided with when you pick any kind of professionals. You can go to just a therapist, and the therapist can screw up your life. Okay,
So hopefully not, but yeah.
no, it's happened. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is, and I've told you the story before, is I think EOS is amazing in certain settings, but I don't think it's amazing in every setting. I think you have to have some things on your table set before you might be ready for EOS. And you can agree with me or disagree with me. We're debating it. So one time I was doing one of my hot seat workshops in somewhere, I forget where I am half the time. And the guy had his EOS implementer next to him who was charging him thousands of dollars a month. And he was 2 years behind on his bookkeeping and accounting, and his cash flow was completely screwed up. And he was a hot freaking mess. And I looked at his EOS implementer and I said, you're committing malpractice. She didn't like that. Okay. But if you don't, that's like building a house. And this is an extreme example. And there's no plumbing or wiring. So what the hell are you doing trying to design how to build a bigger house? You got to fix your plumbing or your wiring first. You can agree with me or disagree with me. Then I posted that on one of the message boards I'm involved in, and people got really mad at me. They said the only way he would have ever uncovered that or figured out that was his problem was if he had EOS to help him figure out how to do that.
Well, I am a huge believer that you got to have cash in the bank. I mean, that is the first thing I'm looking at. Very often, though, it's remarkable to me how few people have a real understanding and real visibility into their cash flow and into, they think their revenue is high and they're growing, and they don't even understand that they're growing broke. So I am a huge believer. I focus on cash all the time. Uh, so I do think that needs to get figured out, but there are people who need an EOS implementer to shine a light on that. Very often they don't realize what their problem is. So,
Look, what that happens to us, people call you thinking they need one kind of loan and they're completely wrong. Okay.
right, right.
I just, I wonder, I'm fascinated in this idea about like, I just had a full body scan. Have you heard of these things?
Yes.
I had one. I'll tell you about the results off camera. Okay. But you went into this MRI and it comes back and it tells you every little thing weird in your body, the size of a pea that shouldn't be there. But then you have all this information and you can kind of figure out a plan about what you want to follow up and what you want to prioritize and this and that and the other. Is EOS the full body scan for a business?
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide in EOS. So your issues are going to become crystal clear. So it's going to become clear. If a person doesn't have cash, I mean, that's going to become clear. At least in my session room, it's becoming clear. There's no question about it. But I think one of the key components about EOS is we're constantly smoking out issues. And there's nothing wrong with issues. Every company has issues. The best company in the world have issues. The difference between great teams and average teams is great teams face and solve their issues. They're not hiding behind them. They're not saying, oh, revenue is great. I have no cash in the bank. This is all great. They're realizing and they're learning. I always say there's a spectrum of approach to issues. One end of the spectrum is the common approach, which is prayer. Please, God, let this issue go away. So we always say issues are like mushrooms. If you ignore them, they multiply and grow. And I've experienced that many times myself. So what we're doing at EOS is we're always smoking out issues. I feel like it's almost annoying. Like, okay, what's wrong? Who's not the right person in the right seat? Where are we? And we are looking at financial metrics every single quarter, by the way. But so that's the other end of the spectrum, being open and honest with your issues. And so there really is nowhere to hide in EOS.
But Amy, is some of that dependent on who's sitting in? I agree with you, but doesn't that some of that depend on the strength of the implementer?
It depends on the strength of the implementer and also the strength of the team. So I'm as good as my leadership teams. I teach everybody the same thing. If a CFO is coming to me and the numbers aren't real, there's no way I would know that. That's for the auditor to figure out. But if I can't describe to you the difference in teams based on the quality of the team. So sometimes I'll say to a team, do we have the skill set to even address this issue? Are we even the right, or do we need to go and get some help?
It's so interesting to me. And I also think I'm just talking about the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem here in general. And I was talking to somebody the other day about how in our work, we have an interesting perspective because we dig into a company's underwear really fast.
Right.
Like going through these financial questions, which they can or they can't answer. And if they can't answer it, that's another concern. But when you get to the bottom of the financials, you can say, this is what's wrong, right? But then it's up to me or our team to know once we've figured out what's wrong, what we're good at and what we're not good at. So I think about it a little bit. I try to model my life a little bit after my dad, who was an ophthalmologist, right? And he was a cataract specialist, right? And so there was probably no one better in the San Diego if you had a cataract problem than my dad. But if you had a retina problem, he could probably figure it out, but probably not the best guy to go to, right?
Totally.
And so what our part of our culture is, if it's not in our strike zone, we don't want to learn on customers. But truthfully, in our first few years, we were learning on customers' dimes because A, we didn't know better, and B, we needed the money. And so coaching or helping entrepreneurs is in my mind, somewhat of a sacred responsibility. Most people, no disrespect, don't have the foresight to do what you did when you described to me as an example of the guy who needed the sales push and then maybe EOS. But most people are hungry for money and hungry for build their coaching practice, and they'll take whatever client they can get their hands, even though they may or may not be the best resource for that at that time. And I don't know if there's a way to solve for that. I had another guy a few weeks ago called me up in desperation. He's one of these growth consultants. He's so excited. He took on his newest client. He was his first client. He'd been training, the methodology is ready to go. The client had paid him his first down payment, his first month retainer came along, and he's 4 weeks in, and the guy can't make the payroll. And I'm like, I actually know the company, and he hasn't been able to pay payroll for months. And the last thing at that point he needs is an expensive growth consultant. Right. So how can we figure out how to make the ecosystem sort of better so that the coach in that, and I've invested in different coaches and systems over the years, and sometimes I let them go. I might not be coachable. That's a different story. But the needs change at different times. But if people get ingrained in a coaching system or a methodology that's wrong for them, or a coach that's not best for them, that can really send them down a deep rabbit hole. And now, that whole problem might not be solvable, but there are business coaches and implementers and hanging out in entrepreneurial circles, like on every corner of the street. And how do we make the system, if we could figure out how to sort of have standards where the whatever coach or system they're investing in is what their needs are right then, or will get them in that direction, the whole entrepreneurial world, in my opinion, would be healthier. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it's a different business. What we teach at EOS is stick to your niche and become bloody rich, right? And we've had this conversation before. Somebody should do that. It's a great idea to do some sort of overall, although maybe your auditors do that. It's some sort of overall look at your business and where are your weaknesses. I mean, when I was running my business, our auditors used to give us, Amy, you work too hard. You got to take off a couple of weeks because we got to.
Did you listen?
No, but I'm not a role follower, I told you, but you have to, but they were telling us because the business needed to run without me. That was the point of it. But that to me is a different business. But we've had this cash conversation numerous times. And I want to just tell you one story that I thought of this morning as I was thinking about our podcast. Because I had a client that I started with, and very early on, they had to fire a whole bunch of people because they ran out of cash. Now, they ultimately sold within 3 years for huge numbers, over hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, what happened? What changed there? And I spoke to the COO, the integrator, yesterday, because I was also thinking of you, and I was like, what changed there? And this is my greatest client success story. I can't tell you their name because they don't want anybody to know. But the thing that changed was the visionary finally agreed to focus on their core business. Like we say, stick to your niche and become bloody rich. He had 100 shiny objects. As soon as he agreed to focus on one business and get rid of everything else, he started making a massive amount of money. And he kept saying, but Amy, this other business is going to be so big. Don't you see it? Don't you see it? I'm like, yeah, I see it. You're draining your whole team. You're running out of cash. He needed EOS to help him make that decision. And he sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. He came back a couple of sessions later. He's like, I'm making so much money. But really, it was a cash problem, but it was also a focus problem. So the EOS piece enabled one thing to, maybe the auditors would have figured it out, but I think it was my relentless focus that really helped. And I think he would say the same thing.
I call that the diversification paradox. Have we ever talked about that?
No, we have not discussed that.
So, I mean, as we try to listen to our business all the time, right? We are probably the best SBA brokerage advisory company in the country. Okay. And which is great. And 95% of our revenue is generated by one government program. And if one day someone in Washington made some rule change, we'd be dead.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that model.
Okay. And yet, and so I mean, it's just so interesting. So you talk about a niches to riches strategy. Like one argument is we just become bigger, better, and stronger at what we do. And because we're really good at it, and we have 0.4% of our market. And this was going to be the year where we diversify, really testing different products and stuff like that. And then Trump got elected, and our core business of SBA lending is going to grow 70% this year, and we can't diversify because we're too busy dealing with our core business. And so, I mean, that's another story about why innovation is hard. So I agree with you that the CEO needs to stay focused, but I'm not convinced that niches to riches is necessarily the best strategy all the time.
That story I completely resonate with me because when I was in retail, there were so many of my vendors who would get a deal. They'd be so excited. We finally got Walmart. Amy, I'm going to be so rich. They're out of business. Walmart would kill them. Like that to me, diversificate. I don't like all my eggs in one basket with anything. In this particular case, in the story I'm telling you about, this guy needed to focus. I think once you master one business, he could have maybe gone into these other businesses, but it was too early in his business cycle and he was killing his people. You have a challenge there. You have a challenge there because your whole business could disappear with the next president. Just put away a
I
safe.
mean, I don't think SBA will ever disappear because it's too politically important, although some rules in SBA could change, right? But there's a white PO guy I met a couple years ago. I actually had coffee with him in Wisconsin a couple weeks ago. We were actually COVID buddies. We actually met in person. It was kind of nice. And um, it's interesting coaching thing. He always challenges me to think about, it's kind of a mentor of mine, like what could bring my business to its knees, which is never a fun thing to think about. Like you don't want to think about what could kill you. And I got to two things. This was like 18 months ago or so. I said, we hadn't upgraded any of our IT stuff, or we were still bootstrapped. And I'm like, I got thousands and thousands of pages of tax returns, people's tax returns flowing all around the Ethernet, the global net. And shame on me that I haven't invested in locking down. And we locked down.
Because
So one time, and it was a lot of money, but if somebody comes to me and says, if we get a cyber attack or something, we have cyber insurance now. Like I'll know. So that was the one problem. The other thing that I said, and I think all businesses suffer from this niches to riches or diversification issue, right? I said, I got to add another business besides the SBA. And adding a second business when you're growing is really difficult.
right. Well, these are, it's an art and a science. These are challenging questions. I mean, my business at Party City completely changed. We own the Halloween business, and then Spirit came in, and we went into the temporary Halloween stores, which really is a different business. And you have to evolve with the marketplace. And you have to, I think that's a great exercise. I love it. I'm going to ask all my clients next quarter.
So, but if you think about it, sometimes you have to also assess the risk. Like, so say you're on the hotel business, okay, or the gym business, and then COVID hit, and suddenly your business was dead.
You couldn't prepare for that.
You couldn't prepare for that. So, like, there's some things, even if risk is relatively low, there's some things where there's just risk, right? So but it's an interesting question to just think about.
Also, that's why cash is so important. You need to keep cash in the bank. You can't drain your cash. That is, you have to have liquidity.
you have to have liquidity. And I have a picture that I use of two football players in their practice ready to kill each other, offense and defense. I use that when I lecture or I talk, and I actually use slides, which I don't like. And I say, this is how I want you to think about your balance sheet. You have to be prepared for the unexpected crisis that's going to hit. And you have to be prepared for the unexpected opportunities that are going to become your way. And how you do that is by creating maximum flexibility for yourself.
I love that.
And let's go back to what we talked about at the beginning, because I think it's super important, is that I strongly encourage everybody to, when you're looking for a coach and implement it, I'm a big believer in coaching. I think EOS can be amazing, but talk to a couple people, right? Don't just settle on the first coach or implementer that you meet. They're all different shapes and sizes and varieties. And to your point, decide, do you prefer somebody in person or virtual? And unless you're living in some remote rural area, there's likely somebody in person who's really good in your area. And then talk to three of them and think, who's really going to help push you to grow to the next level?
Right. And who do you have chemistry with? And the quality of EOS implementers is outstanding. We have a great community.
Yes, but, and.
Yeah, everybody I met is great. Listen, nobody's in the session room with more than one person.
Yes, but, and look for somebody who's got types of experiences that you think are going to be meaningful to your business.
Yeah.
So I've met EOS implementers. You got some amazing diverse retail. It's not like when someone says they want a fractional CFO. Okay, I have a fractional CFO who I use from time to time, and he used to work in banks. So he understands banking. I have a friend who needs a fractional CFO. She's in manufacturing business. I'm pushing her to get a fractional CFO who's been in international manufacturing before. So I've met some EOS implementers who've run restaurants. If you run manufacturing plants, might not be the best one for you. So I think it's also important to think about the experiences or the life experiences that your EOS implementer or your coaches had, and look for one that you feel that you can most relate to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. I think you're looking for who they are, how you connect with them. Their personal style, I think, makes a big difference because my style is definitely not for everybody. Not everybody wants to hear it so open and honestly. So I think it's their style, it's their life experience, their EOS experience, what you said, virtual versus live, which I still think live is better, all of that.
Love it. Amy, where can people find you?
LinkedIn, Amy Holtz, HOLTZ, or amy.holtz@eosworldwide.com.
So, and you're based in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yes.
Amy gets to put up with me in person from time to time. It really is hard for her. It's frustrating.
Really, actually, a pleasure. You always challenge me.
Amy, it's been so great to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.